What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. TravTries is here for another video. It's been a while, and we're going to be talking about the Planet of the Apes trilogy, the latest trilogy that's a prequel trilogy to the original films from back in the day. There was that Tim Burton remake as well, and I am looking forward to going back and revisiting those movies, but I just recently saw these movies, and Trav and I wanted to do these together, so I'm really excited to talk about these because I think this is one of the best trilogies ever made, and arguably probably my favorite films in all of the Planet of the Apes movies. I think this was the perfect way to kind of make it a reboot to the series while also making it a prequel and being able to have these little hints and nods that connect it to the original film from back in the day. That original series of films gets a little wacky after the first one, but I really love that original. I remember watching it with my grandpa all the time back in the day. It was just kind of always on, and I've always had a lot of love for that era of the Planet of the Apes, even though some of the sequels that start to get into time travel and stuff get a little bit weird. But let's talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. This movie came out in 2011, which is the year that I graduated from high school, which is crazy to think that this year I will have graduated from high school 10 years ago. Can't even believe that. But yeah, this movie for me just works on pretty much every level. The characters, the epicness, the action, the heartfelt moments. This is a movie that it would be kind of an insult to say is just a prequel. You know, this is a movie that in and of itself tells its own story while also setting up for so much more. I think what they do with the characters in this movie and kind of pushing the narrative forward for this trilogy, it's absolutely epic. It tells its own story. It's exciting. It's emotional. It's heartfelt. And you can just definitely tell that the creative team involved with this movie knew what they wanted to do. They had a vision for the movie. And in my opinion, they executed it incredibly well. So this film was directed by Rupert Wyatt, who doesn't have a huge list of films that I've seen, to be completely honest. He's done some TV stuff and some, smaller films and just films in general that I'm not overly familiar with, but I love what he did with this movie just from a direction level. I love the performances in this film. You have people like James Franco and Freida Pinto, as well as John Lithgow, and then the most notable name in this entire trilogy, Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is just an absolute incredible talent, and we've seen it from everything from Lord of the Rings with Gollum to him playing King Kong in the Peter Jackson 2005 King Kong, which was the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that he played an ape, and I think he was incredible in that film as well, which I also did a review for with Trav. You should go check that video out. Yeah, he's also gone on to do other great things with Marvel and Star Wars as Snoke, and he's just been in a bunch of other stuff, and Andy Serkis is easily one of, if not the greatest motion capture actor of all time. He knows exactly how to perform and bring the characters to life using motion capture, and he is so dedicated to the craft. If you watch any behind the scenes stuff just on these three films alone, not even counting Lord of the Rings and everything else that he's incredibly well known for, you can just see that this man takes it super serious. It's so easy to think that they look so goofy in these, grayed out, kind of this like skin tight motion capture suits, but he brings so much nuance to these performances. There's so much believability, and I can't help but have nothing but respect and love for Andy Serkis as a performer. And this movie just absolutely blew me away the first time I saw it in theaters, and every time I watch it, I still get the chills at certain points in the film, and I'm just absolutely in love with this movie. So James Franco is our main character in the film, pretty much, and he plays this character named Will, whose father has Alzheimer's, and it's gotten pretty bad where his dad isn't really remembering anything. He works for a pharmaceutical company, and he's trying to discover some sort of cure for Alzheimer's. At this lab, they're testing on apes, and one day, one of the apes actually shows some really great improvements. When they go to get this ape to kind of show it to the board, to just kind of, use her as an example, she ends up getting very violent with them, ends up causing this whole scene, and they end up having to kill her. Because of this, they end up assuming that the serum that they gave her was the reason that she was aggressive, and so they end up putting down all of the other apes, but they end up discovering that the reason that she had gotten aggressive is because she was pregnant and hadn't given birth, and they didn't know. And she was only being aggressive because she was defending her baby. So James Franco's character Will ends up taking this baby chimp home with him, and over the course of weeks and months, he starts to realize that this ape is incredibly special. The serum that they had put into Caesar's mother had come through to Caesar through his birth, and now he's showing that he is easily the smartest ape that they have ever seen. So James Franco's character keeps him under wraps and keeps him like a pet. And at first it's cute, it's fun, it's lighthearted, but as he gets bigger and gets more intelligent, it starts to become a bit of a problem, and it ends up causing some problems for them when Caesar gets a little bit violent with somebody who he thinks is hurting James Franco's father in the film. From there, Caesar starts to realize his place in the world, doesn't really like it, and does everything he can to bring the same intelligence to the other apes that he starts to come in contact with, and essentially starts this uprising of apes in the city, and they end up escaping off into the redwoods, and that's how the movie ends, and it's the setup for the rise of the Planet of the Apes. Man, I really thoroughly enjoy this movie. Every step of the way, I have such a great time with it. I'm so sad that James Franco is not in the other films. I think what he brings to this movie, the sense of humanity, the connection and love that he's able to give to Caesar, even though Caesar ends up leaving him, is just so emotional every time I watch it. Their connection, especially their last moments together at the very end of the film. I think this movie works on pretty much every level as an emotional, epic action film that has great sci-fi elements, but is also fun and lighthearted and entertaining, but really tugs on the heartstrings when it needs to. This is a movie that genuinely keeps me engaged from beginning to end every time I put it on. I can't put this movie on not expecting to stop what I'm doing and get completely and utterly engaged. And I've had so many great times watching this movie. I never get tired of it. And Matt Reeves would go on to direct the second and third one, and I think he absolutely knocked it out of the park and gave us a great trilogy. The finality at the end of the trilogy is so emotional and so well done, and quite frankly, I really do believe this is one of the best trilogies ever brought to screen, ever. Now that I've rambled my thoughts on this movie a little bit, let's go ahead and hear what Trav had to say about this one.
What's up, guys? This is Trav, and I am back again on Anthony's channel. Once again, I'd like to thank Anthony for letting me be on here. That dude's a beast. He's a beast. So I just wanted to throw my quick thoughts on Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is crazy to think that this movie came out in 2011. I almost said 2013. 2011! What, like, this was before Man of Steel. Are we alive? What's going on? The only film in the trilogy that was directed by Rupert Wyatt, he didn't come back. It was Matt Reeves taking on the second and third movie, which, you know what, Anthony's probably told you that by now. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is not my favorite in the trilogy, but it is the one, man, that has a special place in my heart. Like, James Franco, like, literally killed it in this movie. Like, I'm shocked every time this might actually be my favorite James Franco role. I don't know why, it just is. Like, besides him playing Harry Osborn in the Spider-Man films, it's just like, he brings this level to it where I actually believe that, like, Caesar is this real animal that he has this connection with and that he raised. It's a movie that I would never have expected to be as good as it is, and for a kind of sort of reboot to the Planet of the Apes franchise, this movie absolutely killed it, and I love it literally from start to finish. Like, the other two films have this way of bringing emotion to the screen, but for some reason, I almost feel like I might get choked up a little bit more with Rise. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of scenes that just bring this emotional, like, level to it. Same way that I feel with, like, 2005's King Kong. Like, you feel that, like, emotional attachment to an animal that just seems so real. By the way, Andy Serkis, can we talk about him? Andy Serkis doing the performance capture is just absolutely brilliant, and it's just crazy how it gets better from there. I feel like Rise, like, that face definitely aged, but it definitely just, like, went up a notch with Dawn. It's a movie where Andy Serkis and all of the cast, James Franco and that one chick, I don't know her name, but it's a movie where, like, you could tell everyone is giving it their all, and it really, like, I don't know if I can think of one bad performance actually in this movie at all. Like, everyone is very believable. It is just, like, on this level that I never would have expected, like, a reboot for this franchise to be. Ended up being literally one of my favorite trilogies of all time. So much emotion in this movie, and you know what? It had to be something. There had to be, like, a oomph to this movie, because this is how they start. It's called The Rise of the Planet of the Apes. You had to have this believability factor of, like, okay, scientists messing with stuff and other stuff happens. You had to have that believability factor to really just like launch this trilogy, because if you didn't have Rise, you wouldn't have Dawn and you wouldn't have War to finish it out. It probably would have been fine if they would have started with Dawn and maybe Dawn be like the first of like a couple other ones, but you know what? The fact that they show us the scientists and all that jazz and how Caesar started out is just like, it was needed. It's a movie that you don't know that you need until you watch it. One of those kind of situations. I'm going to toss it back over to Anthony because this is, after all, his channel. But I just want to give my quick thoughts. I love this movie, and I hope that if you haven't watched any of these, or even if you're just missing the fact that you didn't watch Rise, watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes. You won't regret it. It's probably on YouTube. You can rent for cheap. Thank you so much for watching, and ladies and gentlemen, Anthony A. Perez.
A big thanks to Trav for being here in this video. Loved hearing what you had to say, man. I'm glad you love this movie as well. I can already tell that you love this movie with our conversations leading up to this review, but I am super excited to talk about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes with you, my friend. I also have to say that I agree with what you said about James Franco. I don't know if this is my favorite of his movies, but it's definitely one of my favorite movies of his, because I think he just does a great job of being the outside perspective for the character of Caesar. Us as an audience, we're able to just see that love and that connection that he has with Caesar, and it really humanizes, and more than anything, just really lays the groundwork for the emotion that we all have for Caesar. You know what I mean? It's easy to kind of see him as a villain at certain points depending on your viewpoint, which we do see with more humans later on in the set of movies. But I think that what they're able to do with James Franco's character and their relationship and their bond, I think that it really sells the character and the emotion behind everything that happens with Caesar. I really love James Franco in this film. Andy Serkis is phenomenal in this film as Caesar. He's so believable. And again, if you have not seen this movie, or maybe you have and you haven't seen the behind the scenes of these films, you have to see what Andy Serkis does for this character. Acting like an ape, the small little moments, the nuance to his performance, it's so believable, and you can see his performance in the movie. Even though it's a CG character, even though, you know, there's incredible animators and an incredible CG department behind these films, when you see the side-by-side shots of him playing Caesar, it is absolutely and utterly him. His performance is there, and it is so realistic. And it's crazy because this movie looks phenomenal. And I would say it's the weakest of the three as far as the CG goes, which usually is the case. But man, in the second and third film, especially in that third film, there are shots in the movie where the apes look so realistic that I'm just blown away at how beautiful the CG is. It is some of the best CG I've ever seen in a film ever. You 110% believe that these apes are on screen, that these are real apes acting while you're watching these scenes. They're so believable. I love Andy Serkis as the character of Caesar. He's powerful, he's emotional, you feel for him, you're happy when he's happy, you're sad when he's sad, you're angry when he's angry, and you just feel inspired by his character. And I just have to give nothing but props to Rupert Wyatt, who directed this film, James Franco, and Andy Serkis, and everybody else that was part of this film. I have to give an immense amount of praise to the CG department, to the animators behind this film, to the people who did the music, the composer. Everything about this film on pretty much every level works for me. I don't really have any negatives to really bring to the table, because this is a movie that is damn near perfect for me, and I feel this way pretty much about all of the films in this trilogy. Now, you know, there are some moments in this film that are a little bit slower. When I think back at this movie, there's definitely, you know, a couple of moments here and there that I kind of forget about at times, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of forgettable. But for the most part, this movie works. It's emotional and it's impactful. And one other thing I want to mention is that there's some cool little Easter eggs if you're watching the TV screens and some of the news articles that happen throughout the course of the film, where they talk about the spacecraft that's taking off, and that I believe that they mention at some point that the spacecraft kind of disappeared, and it's all little hints and nods to the original film, where we know that there was, you know, astronauts that took off into space. They end up kind of going into some sort of like time warp, some sort of black hole, and that's when they, you know, jump time and end up coming back to the planet years later. And I like that there's those little Easter eggs that if you're watching the news channel and all this kind of stuff, that kind of hints to the original film. So yeah, for me, this film just does a great job of, you know, paying tribute to the original films and really setting up those films while also 110% being its own story. You can watch this movie in and of itself, and it is exciting, it's emotional, it's epic, it's fun, it's cute, it's heartbreaking at times. And I think this is just what I love about movies, a film that takes you on a roller coaster of emotions. I love this movie. Thank you to TravTries for being here in this review with me. You can find the links to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.